All right, I'd like to go ahead and welcome everybody here today to the Land's Home Hydroponic display. How many of you have ever thought of being able to grow your own herbs and vegetables year-round, maybe even in your own kitchen? Well, if you have, today I'm going to show you how you can actually do this. It's called hydroponics, and we have a system here for you. But before I get talking about the system too much, I would first of all like to introduce myself. My name is Tim. I work right over here at the Land as a researcher in our plant nutrition department. Now, I have a degree in horticulture. In fact, I graduated from college about 2 years ago, where I originally started here at the Land as an intern. I spent about 6 months in their hydroponic greenhouses working with a wide variety of hydroponic systems. Now, ever since, I've been hired to work on various research projects. In fact, the last one I spent time working on was setting up, building and displaying this home hydroponic system for the Flower and Garden Show. We wanted to design something real simple, easy to care for, and a very maintenance-free system for the average homeowner, something that each one of you can actually do yourself. And I'm going to talk about this in just a minute. Now, myself, I've always been extremely fascinated with hydroponics, and not only because we can actually grow plants without soil, but we can grow them virtually anywhere as long as we give them the proper growing conditions. Now, let's start off by defining hydroponics. So what exactly is it? Well, hydroponics is growing plants in a nutrient solution rather than in soil. So the systems you see right here must provide to the plants everything the soil normally would. For example, support for the roots. You know, the roots grow down into soil, and that's how they stand up. Well, our artificial media provides an excellent support for the roots. It's very porous, allows them to easily grow down inside. At the same time, because of its porous nature, it aerates the roots much better than the soil would. Now also, these systems must provide nutrients and water to the plant. What we'll do is we'll take the nutrients, which are essential to plant life, dissolve them into water, and then deliver them directly to the roots of the plants. And now this allows the grower much more precise and accurate control over how his plant is being fed, because he can do this. Now also, these systems allow us to set them up virtually anywhere, inside your own home, with artificial grow light, on a backyard patio, or in a greenhouse. This will all allow for better environmental control as well as year-round production. Now, before I start out with the system here, I'd first of all like to introduce some of the various hydroponic growing media to you. What is it in a hydroponic media that makes us choose it for growing media for the roots? Well, it needs to be lightweight, porous, very sterile, easy to work with, holds plenty of nutrients and water. At the same time, it readily releases that to the plant roots. In fact, Perlite is a real good example of this. In our system, we are using Perlite in these 3-foot-long grow bags right here. Now, how many of you are familiar with Perlite out here? It's a few of you. Yes, it's a very common potting soil additive. In fact, its origin is a volcanic rock, which was heated to a very high temperature. It can hold up to 10 times its normal weight in water. And that's what makes, you can see, it's very lightweight, can hold quite a bit. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to this poster back here. This is the inside view of a Perlite bag. You'll notice how it is 100% filled with Perlite. You'll notice there's a little reservoir of nutrient solution at the bottom of the bag. And so that's how the Perlite gets the nutrient solution. It wicks it up from that reservoir, which will constantly keep the bag nice and moist, just like a wick would in an oil lamp. Now, we do use other growing media besides the Perlite. For example, we'll use rock wool as starter cubes for our seedlings. These also come in grow blocks. There are many other growing medias in the industry as well: sand, gravel, wood chips, pine bark, vermiculite, a mica-based potting soil additive, oasis, very common in the floral industry. Porous aggregate, you might find this if you've ever bought a home hydroponic kit. It normally comes with the porous aggregate rocks. Now, all these are used, and they all work well to some extent, but the two important media that you're going to find most commonly used in the industry would be your Perlite as well as your rock wool. Now, next, I've introduced some of the media to you. Next, let's talk about how we actually seed our plants before we transfer them to the hydroponic growing system. Now, first of all, I recommend when purchasing some seeds for your hydroponic system, be selective. Just don't grab any seed off the shelf at your local garden center. Look at the back. See if that plant is resistant to disease and pest. And if it is, that's the one you want to select, because then you'll have fewer problems down the road as you're growing your plants. Now, once you've selected a high-quality seed, we'll plant them into these trays right here. Now, each tray will have 100 1-inch cubes of rock wool. And what we'll do is you'll notice each cube has a small depression at the center. Now, we'll place the seed inside that depression, and then once we've seeded an entire tray, we can then cover it with a thin layer of vermiculite, that mica-based potting soil additive. Now what will that do for us? Well, it protects the seedling from sunlight and allows for proper seed germination. In fact, once the seedling has emerged in a week or two, we can then either transfer it to the growing unit. In other words, I can cut a little square in the bag, work my finger in there and put that little cube right inside the bag. Or if it's a slower growing plant, we'll take that cube and transfer it over to a 4-inch rock wool block. We just simply place it inside like this right here, watering it with a nutrient solution for about a week or two, and then once that's developed into a young healthy plant, we can then transfer it right into the actual hydroponic growing system. And this is basically what it'll look like at that stage with a good root and shoot development. Now, when we go to transfer it to a grow bag, right here we have an example of a grow bag from our system. What many growers do, they'll just place the block directly onto the surface and allow the roots to go down inside the perlite, just as we can see in our poster right here. Now, what we do here at the land, we'll use a 4-inch open bottom cup. You can see it has a lot of space there, and we'll just slide the rock wool block down inside. This gives us a lot of extra room at the upper surface, and on that upper surface, we'll sprinkle perlite. Now perlite, because it's much drier on the surface than rock wool, will help cut down on a lot of the algae growth. So it naturally controls algae for us, and algae will many times attract harmful pests such as fungus, gnats, and shoreflies. So it's a real good method for us for algae control. Okay, I've introduced some of the various hydroponic growing media to you, how we start our plants, how we transplant them. Next, let's talk about the actual hydroponic growing system here. Now you can do this yourself. In fact, all the materials that I used to build this, I purchased from local hardware stores and garden centers. I bought some PVC trough for the Perlite grow bags. Now I purchased an 8-inch piece, cut into a 9-foot section, glued caps on the end, took a bandsaw, cut that pipe in half, flipped each side over. As you can see, they made excellent troughs. Each one holds 3 bags perfectly. Now you'll notice these troughs are sitting on a 4x4 stand. Now that's to keep them elevated off the ground so the solution naturally drains out and flows right back to the main tank. But also, there's other benefits if you think that by having that raised up off the ground, you help prevent against all your back work bending over to your garden like you would normally do on the ground. You keep your plants free of soil pests and diseases down below, and of course animals that like to eat your garden plants as well. So those are just a few benefits of having it raised up off the ground as well. Now once we set up our troughs and our grow bags and our stand, I then installed a 15-gallon tank, and that's where the actual nutrient solution is being stored. Now inside that tank, we have a small submersible pump, just like you'd use to run a fountain or a bird bath in your yard, and most of you have probably seen these. I paid about $24 for it. They're really cheap. It sits at the bottom of the tank. There's a cord that comes out and plugs into a 24-hour electric timer on top. Now that timer turns on periodically throughout the day according to our environmental conditions. In fact, presently we're running about 5 cycles a day, about a half hour each cycle. Now when that timer turns the pump on, the pump draws solution from the tank out into the main irrigation tubing, right up to here, into the small drip tube, and then right to the base of the plant. Now what happens from there? Let's take a look at this poster. Here we see the drip tube. The solution falls, and because of the porous nature of our growing media, the solution just works its way right down through the profile of the bag and settles in that reservoir at the base. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the perlite will wick up solution from that bag, and that's what keeps the whole entire bag moist. Now, how do we prevent the roots from getting flooded out? Because you would think, well, how do you control irrigation? Real simple. At the end of each bag, we cut a little slit. It's about 1 inch wide and about 1/3 up from the base of the bag. So this allows any excess nutrient solution above this line right here to drain out into the collection troughs, and they're tilted towards the front, so the solution will just flow into the tubes right back into the main tank. So you can see this system is very efficient. We can reutilize all the nutrient solution, and we call this a closed hydroponic system. And as you can see, at the same time, it's impossible to overwater the perlite bags. So it's a very trouble-free system. Now next, I'd like to talk about the nutrient solution. What is it that we're using on our system that will make these plants look so good and healthy? Well, it's what we call a complete analysis fertilizer. These nutrients we purchase from a hydroponic supplier contain all nutrients which are essential for plant life. They usually come in a 2-part mix. You simply follow the label and mix them in your water accordingly. Now these are real similar to a lot of the complete analysis water-soluble fertilizers you can buy in your local garden center. In fact, most of you may have purchased some if you've grown some vegetable crops or some trees, but those are formulated specifically for soils it will not give you the same results in a hydroponic system. So an important tip, make sure you buy good nutrients from a hydroponic supplier and you'll have best luck with that. Now once you've mixed up your nutrient solution, before you can actually use it, you need to adjust it to a proper pH. Now how many of you out here have heard of pH before? A few of you, yes. Well, pH is a measure of acidity. In fact, I have a nice little chart here that demonstrates why we keep our solution at a certain pH. Now, if you take a look here, a pH of 7 is neutral. Now below that is acid, and above that is alkaline. Now we normally have a target pH of 5.5 because that's when all your nutrients are most readily available to the plant. In fact, if you take a look at the nutrient bands here, you can see as you get higher or lower, those bands start to thin out, indicating that they become less readily available to the plant. And if your pH was to get way up, you would obviously see signs of deficiency in your leaf. So that's very important to keep a pH in a real good range. Anywhere from 5.5 to 6.7 is real good. Now that you know what pH is and where we want it, how do you go about measuring and adjusting pH? Well, first of all, to measure, you can purchase a pH probe or something simple and cheap if you're just starting out, litmus paper. I think I paid about $7 for a container like this, and it has 100 test strips. And all you do is you just simply take the litmus paper out, test the pH, and from there you'd go to adjust it. Now let's say, for example, the pH of my nutrient solution was about 7. What I'd do is I'd use a pH down, which is an acid. I also have the option of using pH up, which is a base. But since I want to bring my pH down, I'd use the acid. I just open the lid, take an eyedropper, adding a few drops at a time, periodically checking, and eventually work that solution down to a pH of 5.5. And once it's there, I can go ahead and turn on the hydroponic system and start irrigating the grow bags. Now I strongly recommend as well that you do check the pH of your solution every other day, every third day, because it will start to adjust due to what the roots excrete from the plant. Also, it's very important, no longer than a week, or sometimes you'll have to do it sooner as your tank gets low. You need to rinse out your tank and take the old nutrient solution, maybe water some shrubs or some trees. You don't have to throw it away. Rinse out your tank and then replenish it with a fresh batch of nutrient solution. Now this has a couple benefits. Number one, by starting off with a new batch, you help prevent against nutrient toxicity and deficiency in your hydroponic growing system. And that can occur when growers keep adding new solution to old solution. It makes sense. Now also, by rinsing out your tank each week, you help prevent against algae and bacteria growth inside the tank. So these are just a few good tips for you to have good luck and have a good successful crop like you see right here. And many times these are mistakes that growers commonly make. All right, now I've explained how the system works, how it operates, and how you can build it. The last thing I want to talk with you today about is how to care for your plants. Very important. First of all, many of these vegetable crops, such as the Hungarian wax pepper, Florida petite tomato, red and green salad bowl lettuce, chives, parsley, and strawberry, all these need a lot of sunlight to get good production off them. Now, if you do decide to do it on a dark porch or indoors, it's vital that you do purchase some high-quality artificial grow lights from a hydroponic supplier. And these are a little bit different from the grow bulbs you buy in your local garden center. These put out a much higher intensity light and will give you a much better result. Also, it's very important that we always monitor our plants for pests and disease, as well as using proper pruning and harvesting techniques. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how to care for vegetable crops and you build a system like this, I can recommend many things for you. Number one, there are many resources available in your local bookstores and garden centers. Many of those we have right over here at the Land Pavilion. Also, I recommend contact your local county extension service. They're free, they're there for you. You can ask them questions. What types of plants will do best in your part of the country? And what types of pests and diseases you may get as well, and how you can deal with those problems. So definitely utilize that resource if you want to start your own garden or a system like this. Now also, if you want to learn more about hydroponics in general, the Land Pavilion over here, as I mentioned earlier where I work, has an excellent behind-the-stage tour. In fact, it's about 1 hour. It's given by someone on their science staff. They take you through research and production greenhouses, lab facilities, and they have demonstrate a wide variety of commercial and experimental hydroponic systems. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more. Now, I do have handouts for all those that didn't get one. You can come up afterwards and get one, or in fact, if you just stay there, I'll come and pass them out to you. And I am open for any questions as well. Now, I do want to thank all of you for visiting the Lands demonstration today. I sure hope this got you a little bit excited about trying to grow some hydroponic plants yourself. Now, thank you all very much, and please enjoy the rest of your day here at Epcot. Thanks. Okay, this lady's question over here was how do the hydroponic vegetables taste compared to soil? Well, as long as you're giving the plants the proper nutrients, they can taste just as good or even better because you're giving them everything they need. That's a good question, though. Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Sure.
Pesticides and stuff are forbidden on this, then they could drain down into your solution, right? Chemical solution.
Well, actually, the way we've developed the system, it's because we're using bag culture. The system is pretty well enclosed, and so any rainwater that comes down will just run off the bag, and we tend to get very little into the trough and back into the main tank. So we haven't had much of a problem with that. You will get a really slight dilution, but by changing your solution every week, rain isn't a problem.
And insects, no problem on hydroponics? Any better, less?
Well, just if you're growing outdoors, you're probably going to have to combat your insects just as you would normally in your garden. But you do have the benefit of off the ground, so a lot of your insects that crawl on the ground and burrow in the soil like your army worms won't develop so much in a system like this. Any other questions on our system here?
Very good.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of your day at Epcot.